All right, we're in a new month, new topic. I'm excited to introduce Ryan Avery.
Hello, everybody. Hello, my fellow motivators. October is here, which means we have a new month. We have a new theme for a month, and this theme is going to be all about discover. And this week's theme is all going to be about discovering something new. Like every month, we start off with the definition. We're going to start off with what the true definition of discovery means. And discover means to find something, or it means to become aware of. And so what I want us to do is I want us to find something. I want us to just become aware of several things. And I had this thought because I saw this open sign in a window of a business. And in order to discover things, I really do feel like you have to be open. You have to be open to discovering things. But there's one other step that we don't talk a lot about. And it's more than open. What we have to do is we have to be inviting. You see, a store can put up an open sign, but if the store isn't inviting, people won't want to go in. And the same is for us. We can be open to new things. We can be open to new ideas, but if we're not inviting those new things and inviting those ideas into our life, most likely we're not going to discover a lot of things. Here's something that I absolutely know about discovery. And we're going to talk about this when it comes to ourselves today. In order to discover, we have to uncover. And sometimes we'll talk about this, but this concept of discovering versus uncovering is a very important aspect if we're wanting to find something and be aware of it. I do have a thought for you though, and you can put this in the chat box. What's one thing you want to invite into your life? What's one thing you want to have more of, or you want to invite into your life? I'd love to know that in the chat box, right? Do you want to invite more happiness, wealth, health, connections, family, a certain person? Getting rid of limiting beliefs? What's one thing you want to invite more into your life? And really, let's think about that so we can get into the conversation of discovering. There are 3 things I want us to discover something new this week. And the first thing I want us to discover is I want us to discover something new about yourself or ourself, okay? Today, what I've got some questions to think about. I've got some stories that align with it. And then I have some questions that I want us to ask ourselves that will help us discover things for this week. I'm loving all these answers of time and happiness and laughter. I love this. I love Tuesdays. Okay, let's jump into yourself. Here's one question to start thinking about. And you can also put this in the chat box too, is what's the last thing you discovered about yourself? I had to think about this one. And this is what made me think of why I wanted to do discovery, is because we should always be learning things about ourselves. We should always be discovering and finding something and becoming aware of who we are and what we want. And for me, the last thing that I discovered about myself is that I can learn the piano. I used to be this guy who said, oh, I can't play music. No, music isn't for me. I can't do that. And what I was realizing is I was simply saying I can't play music. I was saying I don't want to learn music. In my 20s, my 20s were a discovery decade for me. I really discovered a lot about who I was. I discovered who I wasn't. And what I really learned about this, if you take nothing else away from me today, here's one of the biggest things I learned in my 20s. There's a difference between learning who you are or who you aren't and being okay with who you are and who you aren't. I thought I had to discover it, but really what I had to do is uncover it. I had to be okay with, I have flaws, I have quirks, I am weird and different and not normal. And I used to want to conform to those normalities, but really what it was is I had to discover how to be okay with who I was and who I wasn't, not simply learn. I knew who, you know who you are. You really do. You know who you are. Are you ready to be okay with who you are? That's a very important aspect of what I want us to think about today, and especially with discovering and uncovering these things. There's a quote by Drake, dropping a rap quote in here for you. Drake says, I know a lot of people love me. I don't know that everybody loves me. And I agree with that, right? And you should think about this, right? Not everyone has to love you, and you know that people love you, but do you love yourself? Discovering what you're okay with of who you are and who you aren't. So there's some 3 questions that I want you to think about when you can discover more about yourself. Here's how I help discover something new about myself. First question, what's something I haven't tasted in a really long time? What's something I haven't tasted in a really long time? So maybe you thought, ugh, this was gross. Maybe try it again. I do this often with olives. I hate olives. I can't stand olives, but every now and again, I'm like, am I gonna like this? Blah. No, but I'm constantly seeing if my tastes have changed, because sometimes they have, okay? Here's something too to really consider, to ask yourself this week. What is a thought you need to stop? And what is a thought you need to start? Discovering something new about yourself really comes back to thoughts, something you need to stop thinking about and something you need to start thinking about. Finding that answer is really, really powerful. There's another question I gave a couple of my clients a few months ago that I've been thinking a lot about too, because, a lot of us, we think about what we want. And so the third question to help you discover more about yourself is this: a year from today, what is something you want to have? And what is something you don't want to have? All right, so a year from now, what is something you want to have? And what is something you don't want to have? Sometimes we're really focused on what we want to have, but we forget about there might be something that we don't want to have, and you can better discover it once you know those things. So identify it there. The next thing we want to discover something new about is someone else, okay? Someone else. So discovering something new about someone else. Okay, question for you. Who would you like to discover more about? Okay, who would you like to find out more about? Who would you like to? I'd love to know in the chat box. Like, do you want to know more about your spouse, your friend, somebody in history? Like, who is it that you want to know more about, discover about? This might help you understand how you might be able to discover more about them. I will tell you something crazy that happened to me recently with my wife. This like blew my, this like shook my world, okay? I have been with my wife for 15 years, and I found out recently I have never seen my wife swim. Now, this might sound weird to you, okay? But water is a very important aspect of my life. I swim in oceans, I swim all the time. We go to beaches, and I learned recently that my wife never gets in water where she can't stand up. And I'm like, can you swim? And she still is like, yeah, I can swim, but she hasn't shown me if she can swim. And it's just like this. It was like this movie montage where like all these scenes came into play, and every area that we've ever been in water, she's always standing up. She's never swam. And it blew my mind that I discovered something new about my wife after 15 years. I have never seen my wife swim. This is so weird to me. It's so crazy. But it got me thinking, I do want to discover. I like that I still can discover something new about my spouse even after 15 years. That excites me. So there are 3 questions that I want to give you to help you discover something new about somebody, to really know them more and to find out more about them. Now, the first question I want to give you is the question that I love to use when it comes to connecting with other people. And the question is, how did you get started? How did you get started? Now, the reason why we ask this question is what happens is typically what we ask people to discover more about them is, what do you do? And when people ask this question, what do you do? People give you their resume, and nobody cares about your resume except for your mom, okay? But what happens is when you ask, how did you get started? People give you their story. And we like stories. We connect to stories. We learn from stories. We discover things in the process of how they got started. So who can you ask this week to say, hey, how did you get started? And see what you might learn from them. Another concept that you can do to really discover more about someone is ask them a would you rather question to see which one they choose. Or you can also play two truths and a lie. Two truths and a lie, if you don't know, is you give two truths about yourself and you give one lie about yourself, and then the other person has to guess what the lie is. It's a really fun game to play and to learn and to discover something new about that person. So think about this week, who is something you want to discover someone, or what is, if you want to discover something new about someone else, you can do those three things. How did you get started? Would you rather question, or two truths and a lie? Maybe we'll even play it on Tuesday Takeaway. And then the last one that I want us to look at in discovering something new is discovering something new about something else. So yes, about ourselves, yes, about someone else, but something else, a piece of knowledge, okay? One of my questions for you is this too, is what is one piece of knowledge or skill you want to be fluent in? Like if you were fluent, if you were proficient in a knowledge or skill that you don't currently possess, what would it be? I'd love to know that in the chat box. Like for me, it'd be piano, right? I would love to be fluent, be proficient in piano. You know, going back to my undergrad, there was a really great piece of advice I got from one of my college professors. And at first I didn't understand it, and I really didn't take action on it until recently. But I'm grateful for this advice that she gave me because it stuck with me for a while. And the advice that she gave me is I should take a class I don't need credit for. And what she was ultimately trying to help me understand is this would lead me to really finding something I care about and I like. So taking a class, what's the last thing you've learned that you didn't need credit for? Not for your work, not for your school, simply for you, right? And discovering something new about something else. And it's a really powerful thing to do. Like, that's why I like paragliding. That's why I like piano. That's why I like doing these things is I take classes, I learn things, I do things, and I don't need the credit for it. I simply learn it. And you might discover something that you really like about yourself. You know, I was the first person to go to college in my family. Like when I don't know if y'all, like we have the SAT scores in Texas. We do the ACT scores too. I don't know if people still do that, but they're called the ACT scores. And when the ACT scores came in the mail, my dad was like, "Hey son, you got something for acting in the mail." And I was like, "Okay, Dad. All right, thank you." So, you know, learning and growing and doing this is a very important aspect of life, and it always has been. And being around those people, learning something new, very powerful. So some things that you can do, questions you can ask yourself when learning something new is, if money was no object, what subject would you learn about? Okay, if money wasn't preventing you from learning something, what would you learn? Another one is, if I want to know the history of my what, or I want to know the history of, what do you want to know the history of? Your family, your friends, Roman Empire? Like, what's a history you want to learn something from? And then what's something that you want to learn that if you learned, you couldn't share that knowledge? I think about this one a lot, right? So what's something that I want to learn, but if I learn it, I can't share that knowledge? It really gets you thinking about what you want to discover and what you want to understand. So here's the thing. I want you to discover something new this week. I want you to discover something new about yourself. I'm asking us to discover something new about someone else or about something else. You don't have to do all three. If you do, bonus points for sure. But more importantly, what I want you to do is, that's your Tuesday takeaway of the week. Discover something new about yourself, about someone else, or about something else, and find out what you gain from it. And with that, I want to remind you, don't live a life, live the life. I'll talk to you next week, everybody. Thanks.
Thank you, Ryan. Oh, this is going to be a fun one to look through the chat pod. Oh, I could share that with all of you as well. Here in the link, I put the link for the Real Learning Tuesdays. Again, that is the link if you want to watch on-demand versions of previous weeks if you've missed any. Of course, we'd love it if you'd share it with people. We continue to grow every week. We get more people that are joining us for Tuesday Takeaways, either on demand or live. So we encourage that. Yeah, good one today. I agree, Patricia. This is a lot of things that'll be fun to look through and think about. And I can't wait to go try something new to eat. I'm gonna do that for lunch. Let's see what I got.
Good. Love it.
Well, thanks everyone for joining us. We'll see you
Bye,
next week.
y'all. Thanks, everybody.